Ministries on YouTube, we do basically two different types of videos where I, as a faithist, talk to people who are not faithists. And, I talk to Hindus and atheists and Christians and Catholics and anybody who will give me the time of day and be respectful. And then now I'm here with Kia. We're trying to collect faithist stories. Kyra.
That's okay.
My bad. Sorry about that, Kyra.
Yes.
We are collecting faithist stories, people who are walking the walk and who are, living it out, because there's so few examples of that on the internet. There's lots of teachings, more examples of teachings than I thought I would find when I started the Book of Oahspe, but very few faithist stories. So with that being said, would you just introduce yourself a little bit?
Okay. Well, my name is Kyra Lynch, and my spiritual name is Kyra Shimate. And
how did you come up with that? I mean, how did that come about?
Well, that name came about from my spiritual mentor that I met when I was in my early 20s. And I was in a place of emotional turmoil. I feel like a spiritual shift and transition period. And he came and we connected. And he was like he used to be a minister. And he taught in the Christian church. He taught in the Baptist church for many years. And his cousin at the time introduced him to the Oahspe Bible. And that's how he kind of diverted away from the Christian church, because he started making the connections, connecting the dots. He's like, okay, this don't make any sense. What I've been preaching for many years. And so he was connecting what he was researching and reading in the Oahspe with the King James Version of the Bible.
Yeah.
So on that note, he transitioned out of the Christian church, and then he started studying the Oahspe. And then years later, I came along and he introduced me to the book. And so with my studies that I had with him, the counseling he was giving me as well at the same time, that spiritual name came about. He kind of gave me that name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a cool story.
And it represents the meaning of the name Shimate. Kind of represents the beauty of light, the awakening, the person who spiritual seeker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes. So that's how I got the name. Yeah.
Nice. And so you growing up, your background was Baptist too, wasn't it?
Growing up, when I was with my parents and when I was very young, my mom kind of had us traveling through different sects of Christianity. She was raised Catholic.
Okay.
And so naturally, when we were very young, she kind of had us converted to that religion or that sect. And then she kind of merged out of that. And then she started exploring the other sects. And we eventually landed in the Baptist sect for many years. Yeah. So I was in the choir. I was singing in the choir. I was on the spiritual dance team. I did a little bit of everything, participated in the youth activities and things like that they had at the church. Built a nice little community, friends and everything like that. And when I became a young adult, I would say exactly when I turned 20, that's when I started questioning, and I was like, is this really all it? And I started to see the flaws within in the religion. I started seeing the flaws in the people that were participating. I'm sorry for the background noise if you can hear that. I don't know if you can hear the ambulance going by.
I think it's coming in through pretty clear. I can hear you.
When you live in the city, you gonna hear.
Yeah, we got the train run through our town.
Oh, yeah, you can hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So anyway, what I started to notice the flaws and the people that I was interacting with. I didn't feel the sincerity, especially the pastor that I was following at the time and his wife. I didn't feel I didn't feel the need within me, spiritual need that I had within me was being met. I didn't feel the church was fulfilling that. And I didn't feel like the church was overall fulfilling that for all the people. It was just it felt like it was all for show, you know. They have the big performance on Sundays to draw the crowds in, say some good words, and, you know, everyone disperse.
Yep.
You know.
The form of religion, just formalism.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I just started questioning, but I was still involved in the church at the time, and I was in school and college, and then things started changing and evolving for me emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in every way, actually. And I felt like I was in a spiritual transition. It was like me branching off from what I have grew up to know and understand about life. And so I went through also some personal challenges at that time. And then my spiritual mentor, his name is Thurman Anderson. He's no longer with us. He's deceased. And he kind of just kind of corresponded together our pathways. And that's when he introduced me to the OSB Bible and introduced me to Jehovah. And I was like, it kind of was like a moment of, like
Right.
something new information, you know, new knowledge. It was like, wow, this is really fascinating.
It's like being hit in the face with cold water, like, whoa, I'm awake now. What's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I think for me personally, it was a challenge. It was a jolt to your system, most definitely. But it was a challenge for me because you're fighting against the old elements, the old forms or spirits or whatever influences and old beliefs. So it was a period of time when I first started reading the Bible. With that Bible, I was like, it was a strong resistance. It was like, no, you shouldn't be reading this. This is, words started popping into my head. This is evil, and this is wrong. You're reading and things like that. So I had to really work hard to go against him to get rid of all of that.
Yeah, you get voices in your head and you're like, even though Christianity does not make any sense to you at all anymore, it's like, what if I'm going down the wrong path? Because you're going against so much programming. You have this, it's like, I don't want to be a Christian anymore, but is this going too far? Like it's a really scary transition period.
It's a very scary, and it takes a great deal of faith. And I can give you an example. I had a girlfriend in college, and we were very close, and I feel like our paths were really aligned. Interests were really aligned. So we had a really good relationship throughout college. And then when I started seriously getting into the OSB, we kind of talked about this in the last conversation, how friends kind of just dispersed off.
Disappeared.
So When I really became serious about it and I started committing to it, that path, I introduced it to her because, you know, she was the closest person to me at that time. And I was like, you know, you're my friend, you're my buddy, you know,
Right.
I want to share something new with you. And it was the funniest, interesting thing that happened. So it was like at one point we was on a momentum, like we were having Bible studies together.
Mm-hmm.
And then I invited her a couple of times to the Bible studies that I had with Thurman. And she was like, yeah, this is it, you could see it was clicking for her spiritually.
You talking about Bible studies or
Yeah.
OWASP?
Oh, I mean, yeah, OWASP studies. So that's what I meant. And
right.
then it was like, it was clicking for her.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, this starting to make sense, you know? And I was thinking like, maybe she's connecting the dots, like how we were connecting the dots. And she's
right.
like, yeah, no, that makes sense. And this and that and other. And so, you know, I was getting excited. I was like, yes, you know, I got a friend of mine who, you know, born with me, who understands and, you know, willing to go through this experience. And then one day, she came to my house and she basically told me in the most kind and respectful way that she was like, I'm done with this relationship.
Whoa.
And you could literally, I was just observing her the whole entire time. And you can literally feel like she was like shaking. Like she was shaking in fear. Like she's like, but you know, if I embrace this, what would I have? You know, beyond my religions, my faith in Christianity, what would I have? And she was like, I'm going to lose my friends. I'm going to lose my family. And I don't want to lose my friends and my family and the life that I have established for myself.
Mm-hmm.
She says either this or all, and that's how she made the comparison. She was like, is this, I'm going to lose out on all of this over here. So she was like, I can't do it, you know. And she was like, I just wish the best of luck for you. And that was in like, I can't. And, you know, we parted ways. I never seen her ever again after that. And I was sad. I was disappointed, but I was expecting, I was bracing myself for it. I braced myself for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think anybody, especially if you discover this, you know, anytime past your 20s, definitely will have stories like that. I have some friends I was just thinking about yesterday, really good friends, like I would consider them family, and we had lost touch for about a year. Somehow we both simultaneously deleted our Facebooks, and somehow we just didn't have information, which was really weird. And then when we finally did come back together, I was so excited to hear about what has happened to them and then to share, because our whole relationship was about the joy of the journey, like asking questions and finding things new and re-questioning things, you know, so very, very much what I'm still doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we reconnected, they had settled into a community of faith, a Christian community. And I was super excited for them because they have a community. Community is super important, and they found something that really resonates with them. But it was not reciprocal. Like, I could feel very quickly that I was losing value to them, because once they realized I wasn't going to convert, what more use was I to them? And it's the natural way of things, I think, and it is sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough lesson to learn, but once it's learned, it makes it a lot easier to go forward.
Yes, that's a lot easier. It just makes, I guess, the line much clearer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, many years ago, and especially when I decided to align myself with the OSB.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a dream, and it showed me I was in a school and I was leaving the school, like it was the end of the day. And they showed these two roads, and they showed a road where they saw the main population was going one direction, and it just showed a few people going the opposite direction. And it was literally showing me and guiding me, saying, now this is your path that you're traveling, which is the least traveled path. And they showed me walking, and I'm looking on the other side of the road. I'm just seeing the masses going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And it couldn't get any, that dream was just very clear. It couldn't get any clearer than that, the distinction and saying, this is it. This is where it is for you.
It is a solitary. I mean, we have Faithists on Facebook and YouTube, and there are places where I have been able to connect with people like what we're doing right now. But on a day-to-day basis, this is a very solitary path. I mean, there are no communities to speak of, at least not anywhere I have access to.
Right.
And I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, it's, even if there were communities, we have all developed our own way of living life. It's not like in the Book of Oahspe where we grew up in a community, where orphans growing up in a community, all learning the same culture, the same
ways.
I'll put this on Do Not Disturb because I got a phone call and apparently that froze me out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't realize that would happen. What was I saying about the solitary life thing?
The solitary life.
Yeah, it would be really difficult to have a community with all of us having our own individual ways of living life.
Right. And then at the same time, the conflicts that you may go through with your family, because that's like one social sector that you just can't really just completely break off from.
Right.
Some people may have, but like for me, I did not completely break off from that, my family network. We went through a period of separation, and that moment was really intense. That was like for 10 years.
Oh man.
We were always in constant friction and tension, and unfortunately it was right around the same time when I was just really getting into learning and studying about the Creator.
So that was before you became a Faithist?
No, it was right at the beginning.
Oh, right at the beginning. So at the beginning, and then 10 years of being a Faithist.
10 years. Yes. It was like literally the 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really intense because there was a lot of arguments, there was a lot of battles, misunderstandings, they wondering, why am I going this direction? Why am I breaking off from their traditions or their beliefs?
Yeah.
They didn't have any understanding of it, so they fought against it constantly, and like I said, and at the same time, it was right around the time when I was trying to discover my path in life, career wise. Everything was just starting and beginning for me, my adult life.
Yeah.
So it was a lot happening at that time. So, yeah.
My family, my mom in particular, it's more like a don't ask, don't tell policy. She knows she knows that there's something different I got going on, and I've told her, anytime you want to know like what your son's doing and what where I'm at with my spiritual journey, just ask.
Right.
And she never has. She's like, oh, but I love you. I don't have any questions. It's like, okay, Mom. your conflict avoidance isn't really going to be like, it's not going to give us a better relationship.
That's true. Right.
So yeah, we have no conflict, like to the point of, I wish we did have some conflict, at least then that we'd be able to talk about where I'm at and like
Have a dialogue.
but 10 years of alienation and like, not alienation, but friction, that would be tough too. I mean, that's really tough.
The good thing is because I did a lot of personal internal work on myself,
Yeah.
which helped me to heal from that time and have a lot of forgiveness towards my family. And that helped to nurture a better relationship. So they understand and know where I am in my path, and I'm very strong in my convictions in that, and they no longer fight against it like they used to. So they like, okay, this is Kyra. We have to just, we accept her as she is.
So what do you think the difference was? Did you just stop defending yourself? I mean, as far as like,
this is my approach is different, because before I was like kind of gun ho, it's like on it, like, they come at me, coming right back at them.
Right.
So strong. And now I just have a different approach with it.
Yeah.
It's more of a understanding and compassion. And then if I see the conversations leading down a different path than I want, I kind of just change the subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, look at that bird outside, Yeah. Kind of like that.
I do a lot of conversations on TikTok, and I talk to so many people, and that is the trickiest part, is talking about differences without slipping into that sort of debate mindset, like persuasion. I'm like, okay, stop, let's pause. Like, what do we have in common? Like, what can we talk about that we agreed on? Please, let's shift gears here.
Exactly. I mean, it's just the same. I have learned that skill even with my relationship with my boyfriend. We lived together, and at the beginning of the relationship, it was a struggle because of our differences. And we used to, butt heads a lot and get into conflicts over petty stuff. And, and it's realizing for the both of us that we have our differences. And we accept those differences in each other. And we just say, if we are debating on a particular topic and we both not in agreement, we both standing in our ground, it's kind of like, okay, well, we just have to agree to disagree. Okay, and let's just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been a Faithist for like 20 years, right? Something like that? Something like 20 years?
Yeah, close to 20 years.
Close to 20 years. Do you, in your time as a Faithist, besides this transition period where you're like having to renegotiate relationships, if you can imagine yourself not finding a WASP and then comparing it to the last 20 years, how has the knowledge from a WASP been sort of critical in your sort of quality of life, like mentally and spiritually? Like, how has that helped you navigate the last 20 years in a beneficial way compared to if you had never found it?
That is a very good and interesting question. I would think that it definitely helped me to become more spiritually aware of life in general, what's happening around us, and the reason why it's happening, and seeing it's like you constantly referencing, you internally referencing, mentally referencing the book whenever a situation comes up. You hear something that happened on the news, books, or
Yeah.
you read something, you're like, oh, okay, that kind of relates to chapter so and so. You
Yeah.
know, I have constantly have done that throughout, my life at this point, and it helped me to have a little bit more understanding about um, humanity. I kind of it's more of a instead of more of the detail. I kind of related to the broader scope of things. I said, I have my own little, and sometimes I have with other people, but I have my own like uh, spiritual conversations with myself and say, oh, the grander scheme of things of humanity, I see the progression of the creator, where he's moving us to, by seeing these different events that happen in the world, and, and seeing how, for instance, how political leaders are unfolding and before us, and what we are going through as far as humanity in general.
Yeah.
So I kind of related to it on a grander scope of things. It definitely prepares you for the spiritual battle and fight that we go through on a daily basis.
Gives you a lot more discernment, especially on that front.
Yeah, a lot more discernment. And also in some ways you may become a little bit more cautious about going into certain environments.
Yeah, that's true.
Being with certain people. So connecting to what you said earlier about isolation. Yeah, you're going to be isolated because you not only do people just branch off from you, you become more picky and choosy who you want to associate with.
Yeah, even just going shopping, it's like a process, because you understand, like in your home, you feel kind of like sheltered, and then you go outside, it's like you can just feel stuff going on, like, oh, I want to go home so bad right now.
Yeah. Certain environments, you can really feel the energy, the very heavy energy that can drain you. And so, you have to limit your time in certain environments and certain people. Well, I know about that, and I talked to your wife about that too. And I completely agree. I understand what you guys are experiencing, because I definitely have experienced that.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Oh, I want to talk to you about your out of the, and this is really going to be a hard one. This is going to be probably the hardest question. What is your favorite OWASP book or topic that you just really just can't get enough of, or has really helped you out, or just, or is there still a mystery that you're trying to unravel?
Well, I think I can answer probably the last part of the question. The book that I'm still trying to unravel, with, if anybody out there can help me with it, appreciative, is the book of Cosmography and Prophecy.
Yeah.
I love that book. I love learning about how it teaches you about the cosmos, about science, what we learn in school about science. It really contradicts it contradicts that completely, and I wish that book would have been a little bit probably a separate book of itself. I wish it was, and it dive a little bit deeper into learning about the spiritual schools.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I wish there was a school like that existing and that I could attend. That would be like so awesome. So, things like, that book has been pivotal to my life and my study of the book. And also I think like the book of Judgment is really good. And I love how the creator talks about how he judged the governments of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just a reminder, and it help you to understand, what we're going through,
Yeah.
as a society. And also the book of discipline. I think
Yeah.
that's some really good reminders of us how we should be aligned spiritually, and how we should be aligned as a person in ourselves and our lives. So
Yeah.
I would say, those books
Mm-hmm.
have really become really meaningful for me. What about you?
I would have to say I like the very first part of I like up to like Fragapati. It seems so like a new endeavor. Like everything is like getting started, and like the process of organizing, and I love all of it because it feels like that's where the explanations, all the dots started really connecting of what's the difference between the gods and the creator, and how
Right.
all these little misconceptions I've had we're starting to become we're starting to dissolve and being replaced with things that made way more sense. But right now I'm reading the book of Wars Against Jehovah,
Oh,
and
yes.
that
Yeah.
to me
Really fascinating.
is both is both frustrating and also really amazing, because you see the downfall, and you see the writing on the wall for all these different false gods and their kingdoms and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But like I think I'm in like chapter 30, so like 36 to 40-ish is where it starts really starting to go downhill. And one, it shows the constant force of free will. Everybody has the choice. It doesn't matter how high you are, you still have the choice to go your own way. And now these kingdoms are starting to fall into disarray, and starting to fall into hell. And even with that, the creator is still he hasn't abandoned anybody. He still has a plan for all these people, all these kingdoms to be restored. And I think that's amazing. Like, we're never going to be abandoned ever. I mean, we're going to abandon ourselves, but
That's true.
hopefully not. But even if that happens, we're not going to be abandoned. And that is, to me, is like such a better gospel than the gospel. It's like that's good news.
Mhm. Yeah, I can completely agree with that. I love knowing that the creator always have a way for us, um, and making a way for us constantly, and just learning. I think what's also fascinating is how the books, the certain sections are divided. It
Mm-hmm.
shows you simultaneously what's happening in heaven at the same time what's happening on earth, and
Mm-hmm.
showing you, they not only just visually showing you, but just explaining to you through the reading, through the scriptures, showing you that how the spirit world is interacting constantly with the mortal world. Because
Mm-hmm.
growing up and you learning through the mortal education system, you thinking that you're singular, you're the only one here, we the only one here, we the only alive planet,
Yeah.
with species on it. We thinking, we the only ones circulating through the universe, and
Go looking for life out there.
yeah, there's no other life out there. There's just only one God, all these things. But you clearly see when you study the book that, that's not true. That there's,
Mm-hmm.
just learning about the multiplicity of angels. There's billions of angels out there that's working on your behalf, working on the behalf of humanity, constantly. And that there's a process for your life from birth through life to the end, and then your transition into the spirit world is a
Mhm.
process in that. So that's really fascinating.
Yeah. When we first started reading the Book of Divinity, I believe, is when they talk about the levels, the different schools you go through, and you graduate from
Yeah,
one to the other.
I love that
Oh
book.
my goodness, like you
So
gotta be kidding me. This is amazing.
yeah,
This is like an
amazing.
eternity of learning. Like this is way better than like
Awesome.
having a final destination of what? Like what were we gonna do in the Christian heaven? I don't even know what the plan was there.
And it's so amazing because I remember being a little girl and just thinking like asking those questions like, what is life after this? What is it going to be? It's just going to be nothing. We're going to go into nothing. We're not going to exist anymore. I always had those thoughts and those questions in my head when I was young. And years later, coming across this book and those answers being answered, those questions being answered, it's amazing. I'm just like, wow,
Right. And
absolutely.
it's so much more complete and logical than I could have ever imagined. And it's so much more
Exactly.
grand.
Oh
And
my
it's
God.
more eternal than
Yeah.
anything I'd ever even contemplated before as a Christian. You know,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
you have whatever, different Christians believe differently about like the order of the tribulation and second coming and then the new earth. But after you get to the end of Revelation, there's a giant question mark. Now what? Like what eternity with a giant question mark? What exactly are we going to be doing for eternity?
Exactly. A grand question mark. And then the OC answer that question for you. Like they tell you why is a question mark that's not being answered in that book because he's telling you that's a false book. They got false information. They stole information from other books and
Mhm.
from other sources and try to compile them together to make their own book. That's why it's incomplete.
I really like the dialogue in the Book of Wars where they're trying to come up with a reasonable narrative, like the creation narrative, like, and they're going back and forth and like, okay, this page here, take it overnight and you guys discuss it. They come back and like, well, they're editing it out. Like, well, this makes sense, but this doesn't make sense, and they're revising it, and just like, you got to be kidding me! It was like their little projects to deceive us.
Yes. I was blown when I first read that. I was blown away. I said, I can't believe it that they were all these different spheres was working together, trying to compile this information, this false information,
Mm-hmm.
try to make it believable as possible to present to humanity who was ignorant, who did not know. And I'm just like,
They did a really good job because, man, when you're in it and you believe it, it's really hard to get out of it.
it's hard. It's hard. And I really think that, maybe some people won't really agree, but I really do believe the reason why it's so hard to get out of it is because I believe there's a spirit, that Holy Ghost spirit that
Mm-hmm.
is entrenched into the church that overcomes you. And I felt it, because I don't know if you ever attended a Black Baptist church, and maybe they have done that in a white Baptist church, but in a Black Baptist church, they be getting into it with the dancing and the music, and it stirs it up. It
Yeah.
stirs it up. And I used to watch it and like, seeing the people and they just falling out and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, what is happening?
They are in the spirit.
They in the spirit. And I felt it. I felt it one time. And I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is really a thing right here.
Mm.
So I think that's what makes it really hard for people to branch off. And plus, also, they have a real deep rooted community that they
Yeah,
have established.
that was like really tough, losing community. Even though I was going to a Bible study 6 months after I left Christianity. I didn't tell them. I just really didn't want to lose that community. Like, I
See,
still enjoyed studying the Bible.
yeah.
And it was like, you can ask my wife. It literally, I literally every week planned on quitting for like 2 months.
Wow.
And yeah, community. And the other thing, going back to being in the spirit, I think growing up in this environment, this Christian, but it's not just Christian, it's a very Greek mindset. It's very black and white. If I'm saying this is true, then this has to be false. I've come across this idea where people are asking about, WASP and different things, and they're like, but I have experiences with Christianity. Like, I have personal experiences with the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and talking to Jesus and all of it. Are you telling me that didn't happen? That's not true? It's like, no, I'm telling you that that's true. You had all those experiences, and they weren't just your imagination. There are divisions and there are groups. Every religion has like its own group of spirits that are working on it. You can have spiritual experiences in all these groups, but what's the bigger picture? What's the bigger picture? And that's the hardest thing that I have come across is presenting a WASPy. For the ones who are curious, they automatically think I'm declaring that their experiences and their faith, that everything is false in the way that it's pure imagination, that kind of false. I'm like, no, I actually know it's not imagination. I know it's not imagination because I lived it too. But what's the truth behind it,
Yeah, that's true. There's a section, and see if I can find it. I have my book right here.
I got mine right here too.
I was just studying this the other day, and I went and looked into the index section, which I love the index because you can just, and find what you're looking for and then go to that area, that section. So what caught my eye, and I've never seen this before, or really, I've probably seen it before, but never really paid attention.
What is it?
It's in the section that the S section, Swedenborg, the Swedenborg heaven. And that is was chapter, page 769. I don't know, your pages might be different.
Mine's all different, but I found it.
What is it? Yeah, and it's in the book of S, daughter of Jehovah, and it's chapter 28. This is chapter 20. Chapter 17. I'm still trying to learn these Roman numerals.
Oh, I know.
But in that section, they talk about the different false kingdoms in the lower heavens.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular guy, Swedenborg, he was a part of the Christian religion during, I think, the 1600s. And do chat verse 10 through 13. Yeah, it said, I just read a little bit of it. It says, another Judean god, his name is Sayawan, established a heavenly kingdom on earth and called it the highest heaven. This Lord called himself the Lord. He raised up a mortal named Swedenborg, who he took in spirit subjectively into many of the lowest heavens and hell, saying to him, behold, that they serve not the Lord. how hard it is with them. And he further said, this place of darkness is the Brahmin heaven, this place of darkness is the Buddhist heaven, and this place of light is my heaven, I the Lord. Thus did this Judan God establish a Swedenborg heaven, and mortals looked upon him as the true Christi. And after death, their souls went there. And so I researched, after I read that section, I researched on Swedenborg. And Swedenborg did exist. And he exists in the 1600s. And he had a very fascinating life. He was a Renaissance man.
Oh, wow.
Highly gifted, highly like on a level of genius. He was a scientist. He was an engineer. He was a writer. He was a poet. He was a professor. He did a plethora of things, and he had these gifts that I believe the Creator gave him. And he refined his gifts for many years. And then when he hit his 50s, that's when that Judan God came to him, because he said he received visions. He received dreams and visions. And that spirit was talking to him and started to reveal about heaven and hell, which resulted in him writing. He wrote 7 books that are in existence today.
Oh, wow.
That are very popular today. And they actually, his life is still honored today in Sweden. And they built a foundation called the Swedenborg Foundation, in which they are promoting about the principles of Christianity and this particular man and his books, his 7 books. And he written a book called Heaven and Hell, and some other type of religious books that he had written. And I just thought that was really fascinating.
Have you read any of his books?
No, I haven't read any of his books, but he basically, his books, from what the guy, because I looked on you can research it on YouTube. The guy who represented the Swedenborg Foundation, he was explaining what the books are about, and basically he was writing. The books were all intel of his experiences when he traveled subjectively to the lower realm heavens.
Interesting. It kind of reminds me of the Book of Enoch a little bit, being taken, you know, like a tour around.
Right. Yeah, that's what basically he was. He was being taken a tour around the lower realm heavens, and I think that he wanted to, in his own understanding, he wanted to help humanity to understand about life after death. Because he has a book that explains about that, you know, what it's like after death, where your spirit is going to travel to, and sagittal things like that, and written out his experiences, what he saw. I thought it was very fascinating researching and seeing how it corresponded and linked to what is said here, this section.
Yeah, you know what? And even though he was being guided by a false, false God, going through a false, it's still, everything is still based on the creator's set of rules. The architecture may be different, but they're all using the same engineering principles. And so, I would be interested in reading that, knowing that by default, there's going to be a lot of truth in it, because there has to be. And so,
most definitely. They are very popular books. He's written 7 books. I don't remember all the names, but you can research it. You can look onto Swedenborg's Foundation, and the representative, he he did a video explaining about the life of Swedenborg and about his
I'll watch some of
books.
the videos.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
So going back to cosmogony.
Yes.
Yesterday, first, have you heard of the group Universal Faithist of Cosmon, or Universal Cosmon Faithist?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, so I got in touch with them because they have a Wednesday night call that you can call in, and they do different studies, and it's pretty cool. But I like to talk to the having conversations with the people outside of the call is kind of more
more intriguing.
Yeah, because the call can be
very restrictive,
a little difficult because people are all using their different phones and the connections are kind of bad.
Oh, okay.
So it's a conference call.
Yeah.
But yesterday I was talking to the mother and daughter who basically are living on the Universal Faithists of Cosmon property, and they're archiving the library, and they're doing, trying to digitize newsletters going back 50 years. It's really just fascinating what they're doing. Very cool. But we were talking about cosmogony, and there's a guy, his name is Hugh Rosa, and he actually wrote a book called Cosmogony, or A Waspy Science. And I looked it up on Amazon. It's $5. Like, I'm totally going to get that. This guy was an electrical engineer, and apparently, he was an electrical engineer, and he was trying to write a book for the layman describing the book of cosmogony in a way that would make sense from an electrical, I guess, using his education to try and decipher it for us. And I was like, how come nobody talks about this book? Because I have asked on all the Facebook groups I'm a part of for
What's the name of the
book? Well, the name of the book, I believe, is Cosmogony, or I can't remember. It's either Cosmogony or A Waspy Science. I can send you the link. It's on a regular paper format, or I think you can get it for Kindle too.
Right.
But I like having a book. I have to have a book in my hand, really.
Right. Me too. Like something tangible.
Mm-hmm. So next payday, I'm gonna get that book. Because
and it's only $5.
It's only $5.
That's amazing.
Yeah, probably not a very big book, but if it can crack the code even a little bit, for me it's really difficult. I'll read a section and it'll be talking about something, and I'll spend the time to really understand it, and it's just one piece of the puzzle, and then I'll go to the next section and try and understand it. But it's like all these floating pieces in my head, trying to keep them suspended enough to pull them all together to make like a uniform concept that I can understand all at one time. It's hard because it's a different vocabulary, and I'm not trained in the traditional astrophysics, so it's like I'm having to learn cosmogony, and I'm having to try and learn sort of the modern counterpart so I can understand how they fit together, and where they are similar and where they're where the divergence is.
Right. I get it.
Yeah, that's my mystery too. That's the one I've been trying to crack, but
okay.
There was another question I wanted to ask you, but now I can't remember it.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay. Ask me a question.
So how is the journey so far for you with being a faithist?
Well, it's great. I would have to say it's great. And I pause just as a reflection, because I have, like we've already talked about, lost pretty much all my friends and my family, except for my sister. We just kind of kind of just don't talk about anything when it comes to spiritual stuff anymore but the amount of understanding I have of myself
Mm.
is so much more complete and so much more useful than when I was a Christian. Like, I can have real meaningful relationships with people that don't believe the same thing as me. And as a Christian, I couldn't do that.
Right.
I couldn't do that because I was always evaluating them to see if I could bring them in. It's like this value judgment the whole time. Like, it's a very judgmental mindset, and it's very negative. And I've had to really, really, really struggle to unlearn that. And it's so much more walking through life at peace with where I'm at and at peace where everyone else is at is amazing.
It's
Like,
amazing.
everybody has a journey and they're all learning lessons, and that's awesome. Like, I don't have to convince anybody of anything. Like, that's amazing to me. That's so liberating.
I agree. I agree. Yep. I think that also your lifestyle changes. You can step back from the pressures that they put upon you of you following through with, oh, you gotta get these things and you gotta achieve these things in life, and you gotta have this and that and the other.
Right.
When you're following what the mainstream society is teaching you to do or pressuring you to do, you can fall back off of that, and that relieves the pressure.
Yeah. I remember, so my wife and I have been trying to figure out a way of, buying property, living, getting a little homestead type of thing going for like almost 10 years now, right?
Mhm.
And the pressure of that, because, everyone's getting older and we're getting older, of trying to get that going before we get too old to be able to enjoy it. The pressure of that actually gave me shingles at one point because I was so stressed out about it, trying to
Wow.
figure out, how to upgrade my income, and, just it was so stressful, right? And we are still doing that, but for different reasons. Like, I actually have this crazy idea of having property set up for other Faithists to be able to participate, not necessarily a community, but at least a place for people to have a spot, like, you get 5 acres, you get 5 acres, we can be neighbors, we don't have to be like in a commune type of thing. But now working real hard, saving money, all that stuff, but we have had setbacks, we have had things happen where money just like falls through your hand like sand, and we're like, meh, whatever, not that big a deal. And it's so much more like, the context of this life is so much more conducive for a peace of mind. You
Right.
understand, it's really important. And
Right.
money's not important. Like, yeah, it'd be cool to have all that, but it's not going to derail my spiritual growth. Like, I'm not going to be obsessed about it. And
Yeah, and that's what when you get caught up in society, that's what they want you to concentrate on, right? To be obsessed with money, getting money all of the time, and when you don't know the real true value of life, then it's easy for you to fall for that. You don't understand that that's not where true happiness and joy is from. It's from money. It's from within
right.
your spirit, your connection to your creator.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the freedom to not need other people's approval. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's where the whole persuasion mindset comes in, because if you could persuade somebody to change their mind to your side, that's a huge like ego boost, right? Like, oh, that's a notch on your belt.
Right.
and you want you it's like we're programmed to seek that approval of other
Mm.
people.
Yeah, and reading that knows Bible and it talking about, don't you're not here to try to persuade others to follow your way. And I read that the first time and was like, huh, really? Because that's what you're accustomed to and adjusted to in Christianity. We supposed to go out and persuade others. And when I first started reading those, that's what I was doing. I try to convert and try to persuade people like, this is the way, y'all. You need to know this language. You need to know with this much here, because and I got so much pushback. It was crazy until I ran that. The creator took me to that section and said, "Don't do it." And I'm like,
I remember reading that, and in my head, like, well, that's different. I mean, it doesn't really mean that, right? I'm sure I can figure out a way to do it where it's like going to be kosher with the text. I mean, I'm still going to be like on fire for a waspy. And then I, learned that it really means that. And there's a reason for it. Yeah, it really means it. Let people live their lives pretty much.
Yeah, you can't force anything on anyone. They have to naturally want it. And it makes sense because from the creator's perspective, he's like, why would I want a bunch of followers come to me by force?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to come to me by love. You
Mm-hmm.
want to know me. You want to be with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and all roads pretty much, maybe there's a couple of exceptions, all roads lead to the creator eventually. And it's like, so what's the rush? Everyone's choosing the path they're going to be on, and we're all going to wind up in the same place, but we're all going to have lessons that are basically tailored to us. So persuading somebody to jump off their path prematurely is not necessarily the best thing.
Or prematurely. Yep. You're so right about that. So right about that.
Yeah, that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. I learned it pretty much after I burned through my friends, and I had to take a step back, like, wait, I'm doing something wrong here. I'm not listening to the book.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you find your other question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. So this is like the kind of the closing question, because I gotta go to bed. I worked all night last night. If somebody actually makes it to this far, almost like an hour long, what would somebody who is never heard of a philosophy, what would you tell them? After we had this long discourse about not persuading people, what would be your takeaway of not a persuasion, but just your like thought you would leave somebody of a waspy and I don't know, like a thought for them to contemplate, just for them to consider?
Well, what I would say to that person is, if you are a truth seeker and you want to deepen your spiritual knowledge about life and beyond life, beyond this life, then definitely check out Theos. It will open your eyes. It will help you to see a little bit deeper beyond the first level, the first veil that we are all stuck on. That's what I would say.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time.
This has been a wonderful conversation, David. I really appreciate us connecting and